stressful week? Anybody have a stressful couple months? Me too. If I tell you to just calm down, does that help?
No.
Does that help?
Does it? An act of will doesn't calm us down. Elsa's a 15-year-old student in one of my classes, and recently she went on a volleyball trip with her school. And while they were on this trip, a friend of hers got some bad news. And as Elsa tells the story, this friend started freaking out and shaking, and she couldn't catch her breath. It was super scary. She was having a panic attack. The story of what happened to Elsa's friend is incredibly common, so much so that a recent Pew Research Center poll showed that the majority of US teenagers consider anxiety and depression to be a major issue for both themselves and their friends. For the grown-ups, the news isn't much better. According to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, 1 in 5 of us will suffer a mental health or stress-related issue this year. This is costing us billions of dollars in lost wages, turnover, not to mention what it's doing to our relationships. In North America and Europe alone, the total cost of childhood trauma is $1.3 trillion every single year. I first started learning about trauma-informed care several years ago, but what really pulled me into this field was the work that I saw coming out of trauma-informed schools. Schools that incorporate these principles see on average an 80 to 90% reduction in discipline referrals to the front office. And during the same time period, they see on average a 35% increase in graduation rates. And this is in just 3 to 4 years. As this research was coming in across the country, I held up a mirror to what was happening here in Durango. And at home, my own teenage sons had lost 5 of their friends to suicide in just 14 months. So I learned all that I could about adverse childhood experiences, trauma, and toxic stress. According to the CDC, adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, are closely linked to most of the negative health outcomes that we see in adulthood. And that includes depression and suicide and addiction and heart disease and several others. But the data also shows us that we can offset those negative health impacts by building resilience. We can build it within ourselves, we can teach it to our children, and we can incorporate it into our workplaces. As I was leading trauma-informed workshops to local businesses, something happened that I didn't expect. More and more people that were attending those workshops asked me to start coming into their classrooms. And they asked me to teach this very same material to high school and college students. We learned about the impact of trauma on our brains, our bodies, and our behaviors. We learned from a neurological perspective why, when we're in our lizard brain, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in and our lives just don't function well. But more importantly, we learned what to do when we've been triggered into that lizard brain, how to pull ourselves back up into our prefrontal cortex, into our wizard brain. So let's break this down. Say you're on a hike and you run into this guy. Or maybe, like happened at my house yesterday, I walked out my front door and he was just waiting for me. A few things are going to happen automatically without us even thinking about it, right? Our heart rate's going to go way up. Our pulse Our digestion is going to slow way down. Our blood platelets actually prepare to clot before we've even been cut, just in case. We're flooded with adrenaline and completely geared for survival. This is the lizard brain. Have you ever tried to catch a lizard in the summertime? All they care about is staying alive. The sympathetic nervous system is an amazing and brilliant system, and yet it's designed to last for 30 to 40 minutes at a time, because after a short amount of time, one of two things is going to happen. Either we've escaped the bear, or we're inside the bear. Either way, we don't have a problem anymore, right? When we're in our lizard brain, we aren't doing higher reasoning. We're not thinking about trigonometry. We're not thinking about how to balance our checkbook. When we're trying to get away from that bear, we're not even trying to figure out what we're going to have for dinner. We're not problem solving. We aren't thinking about consequences. All of that is the work of the prefrontal cortex, or what I like to call our wizard brain. All of this can actually impact our behavior. So the brain just doesn't function well in more than one state at a time. Research shows us when we're highly activated in our lizard brain and our stress response, we have a very difficult time accessing the prefrontal cortex part of our brain. This is why, from a neurological perspective, why when you're in trouble and your mom's yelling at you, there's a really good shot that she's going to refer to you at some point in that argument by the name of your dog. So it can impact our behavior. It might be our own, it might be a coworker or a family member, or maybe it's just the 3-year-old in the checkout line ahead of you. And while trauma-informed care doesn't excuse poor behavior, it is about understanding what drives that behavior. And just as we can't tell who's in their lizard brain and who isn't, we can't tell by looking who's been affected by trauma and who hasn't. So it's best practice to assume that we've all been impacted by it, because in one way, shape, or form, we have been. When we get triggered, it often comes through our senses. For example, we could hear a song or smell a perfume, and it'll remind us of something or someone, often from our past. But the ironic thing is we can use those very same senses and pull ourselves back into this present moment and ground ourselves. And as we practice that, over time, we build our resilience. We decrease the impact of trauma and toxic stress and ACEs when we increase our resilience. We calm ourselves down, not by telling ourselves to calm down, not by telling our children to calm down, not by an act of will, but by giving our brain what it needs. And as we practice that over time, we build our resilience. We're going to practice together here in just a minute. In fact, I'm going to teach you one of the techniques that I taught Elsa. All of this is so helpful, not only for clinicians and teachers, but also for parents and first responders, for all of us, really, because we all have a role to play in increasing our personal and our community resilience. My friend and colleague, Roxanne Pendleton, is the one who introduced me to trauma-informed care. And she also coined the phrase rapid reset for something that we can do in the heat of the moment when we've been triggered into our stress response. Meditation and mindfulness are incredibly useful for building resilience and for increasing our overall well-being. Yet, even so, many of us struggle to incorporate a full mindfulness practice into our lives that are already so busy. Rapid resets are micro practices that anyone can practice anywhere at any time, and they take just a few seconds. One of my favorites is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can feel or touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. Normally you do this quietly inside your own brain, or people might worry about you on the bus. But for now, let's practice together, shall we? 5 things that I can see. I can see this lovely audience. I can see these bright lights and these cameras. And I can see your purse and your tattoo. 4 things that I can touch or feel. I can feel my heart that's beating just a little quicker than usual. I can feel my shirt. I can touch this necklace. And I can feel my feet inside my shoes, and I can feel myself pushing my toes down into the ground. 3 things that I can hear. I can hear somebody making a noise with a water bottle. I can hear a fan, and I can hear your lovely chuckles. 2 things that I can smell. I put some essential oils on before I came out here, and I can smell those. And I can also smell the conditioner that I forgot to rinse out of my hair this morning. And 1 thing that I can taste. I can taste this water going down on my tongue. How many people feel just the slightest bit more relaxed, or perhaps a little bit more focused? Yeah, almost all of you. That's all it takes. I've used this technique on the phone with people who maybe they were having a panic attack on the other end of the line. I've seen parents teach this technique to their 4-year-olds, and I've seen children teach it to other children. And this is what Elsa used that day in the middle of a volleyball game. After the game was over and her friend had returned to her baseline, her friend said to her that she had suffered from panic attacks almost her entire life, at least as long as she could remember. And no one had ever actually helped her calm down. We calm ourselves down by giving our brain what it needs. And lizard brains, they need to know that they're safe. Another example of a rapid reset is something that we can all practice today on our way home. It's called red light, breathe right. And just like all rapid resets, it's incredibly simple. The next time you stop at a red light, simply take the length of that red light instead of fidgeting with your phone or the radio, and just breathe. Deeply and intentionally, fill your lungs as full as they will go, and then when you think you can't fill them anymore, keep breathing, because there's always more. And do that as many times as you can until the light turns or until the guy behind you starts honking. As we practice these micro practices, these rapid resets, when we're calm, we're literally building new neural connections and strengthening other ones. We're building our resilience. As a result of the classes that I've been teaching in our community, students are seeing a dramatic rise in their resilience score in just a couple of weeks. One of our favorite things to do in these classes is to build self-care kits, and you can build your own. These kits are full of rapid resets, and they're all centered around our senses. So the secret to a great self-care kit is for you to be very intentional about it. Think about those things that help you feel calm and centered, and put those things in your self-care kit. It might be a photo of a loved one or a favorite place that you like to visit, or maybe essential oils are your thing, or maybe you like your hands to be moving, so fidget toys are great for you. Include something for each of your 5 senses, and remember your 6th sense too, your sense of humor and your sense of movement, because all of these things play a role in improving our resilience. You can call your kit anything you like. I like to call my kit my Keep It Together kit. Or sometimes my Before It Hits the Fan kit. Build your kit today. Build one with your children. Kids of all ages love these. You can even do this as an activity with your coworkers. In fact, I would suggest it, because if you don't, they're going to steal your toys. You can keep your kit in your desk, at your office, or even in a backpack. Build yours today and use it as a tool to increase your personal resilience. And as we do that and we create pockets of resilient communities, our entire community becomes stronger and more resilient. Because when we give our brain what it needs, we can finally just calm down.